Hello everyone, Super Duper Boy here. So I know the last episode of The Mandalorian Season 2 came out 11 days ago. I've been on a break from making YouTube videos, so I'm pretty late to the party, but I still want to give my thoughts on Chapter 13 to 16. This is a spoiler review, so if you haven't watched Season 2 yet, then don't watch this video, unless for whatever reason you want to be spoiled. Alright, let's get started with Chapter 13, The Jedi. Now, honestly, I think this is the weakest of the 4 episodes I'm reviewing today, but it still has some great aspects. This episode starts off right in the action with Ahsoka returning. The white lightsabers look really awesome in live action. It bamboozled my brain a bit to see Ahsoka in live action. I'm so used to seeing her animated, but I think Rosario Dawson did a good job at playing an older, wiser version of her. I also like this episode because of the location. I thought Corvus was going to be an alive green forest, but it ended up being a destroyed wasteland. We also finally learned more about Baby Yoda, including his name, Grogu. I didn't like it at first, but now I think it's a pretty good name. Also, Coruscant was mentioned for the 2nd episode in a row. I bring that up because Disney likes to ignore that planet and is rarely mentioned in post-prequel content. So I'm glad my favorite Star Wars planet is getting more attention. I honestly expected Ahsoka to train Grogu, but it makes sense why she doesn't want to after seeing what happened to Anakin Skywalker. I like how she and Grogu can kind of read each other's minds. That was interesting. I think Ahsoka was simply really good in this episode. It definitely felt like it was the same character from the Clone Wars, just more experienced, and I was very happy to see her back. But my main issue with this episode is that it felt like some scenes were just too long. Like when Ahsoka is carrying Grogu in the woods, or the scene when she's about to fight the magistrate. The scenes just go on a bit too long without much really happening. Also, for fans who don't know who Ahsoka is, the show doesn't really do much to explain. That's not a problem for me, but is still an issue when a large portion of the audience is casual fans. But besides those problems, I can still enjoy this episode, and I love how they played Ahsoka's theme at the end. So I'm going to give this episode a 7 out of 10. Now, on to Chapter 14. This is, I believe, the shortest episode in the entire show, but a lot still happens. This episode starts off pretty normal, with the Mandalorian going to Tython and using the Force Stone thing. But then, out of nowhere, Boba Fett arrives. Sadly, I had this spoiled because of YouTube's thumbnail, but I'm sure this was a surprising moment for a lot of people. I like how they acknowledge his prequel trilogy backstory with how he mentions Jango Fett. And Boba feels like more of a character in this episode. In the original trilogy, he had his mask on, but now he gets to show his face. People have been wanting this Boba Fett for so long. The version of Boba Fett that's the greatest bounty hunter alive. He was good in the original trilogy, but he never got to fully show his true strength. But in this episode, he uses all of his abilities and absolutely destroys the Stormtroopers. And yes, I must admit that Stormtroopers are really weak in this series, which is unfortunate, but if the Stormtroopers were powerful, then you can't have Boba Fett destroying them so easily, which was one of the best moments. Also, Fennec Shand returns. She doesn't have that much depth as a character, but there's definitely a lot of potential for her in the future. There's a lot of directions they can go with her story. Now, the last main thing I want to talk about in this episode is, of course, the Razor Crest getting blown up. When I saw that happen, I knew things were getting more serious. But there is an upside to the Razor Crest getting obliterated, and that is the fact that the Mando can now fly around in Slave One, which honestly that ship is at least twice as cool as the Razor Crest. So this chapter was mostly an action one, but that's what this show is good at, cool fight scenes. I love seeing Boba Fett back, and Fennec Shand is pretty awesome too. She was a character that I didn't care about in Season 1, but she's a lot better here. And this episode gives us our first look at the Dark Troopers in action. One issue I have is that I wish Din showed a bit more emotion when Grogu was taken. Like, yeah, he was sad about it, but I wish there was a bit more there. Also, it would be cool if Tython was a bit harder to find. The planet was hidden in the deep core and was supposed to be hard to find, so a part where they have to track down Tython's location would have been a good way to make this episode longer. But those are just nitpicks. The episode is overall really good, so I'll give Chapter 14 an 8 out of 10. Now let's move on to the second to last episode, Chapter 15, The Believer. First of all, my favorite thing about this episode is Mayfield. He's a comedic character, but he also says some pretty deep stuff, like how the New Republic and the Empire is the same to the civilians of the galaxy. I also really like the scene where Din Djarin takes his helmet off so he can find Moff Gideon's location. It shows how much he cares about Grogu. But definitely the best part about this episode is the scene where Mayfield is talking about Operation Cinder with an Imperial officer. The acting was really good. Pedro Pascal, who plays the Mandalorian, was able to act without his helmet for one of the first times, and the actor for Mayfield, Bill Burr, does a really good job at acting PTSD, and this episode made me really like his character. It's cool how this season brought back Fennec Shand and Mayfield from season 1 and made them better characters. Mando got his own development by willingly taking off his helmet, and we got to learn some of Mayfield's backstory. Some other things I liked is when the TIE fighters saved Mando from the pirates. Those same TIE fighters were later blown up by Boba Fett's seismic charge, which is an awesome callback to Attack of the Clones. This episode is one of my favorites in the whole show, so I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. But an episode that's even better is Chapter 16, The Rescue. For the first bit of the episode, it's just the main characters, including Bo-Katan, who's back, just destroying stormtroopers. But things get real when the dark troopers are activated. Just one of them absolutely destroys Din Djarin. That's a good way to show your villain's strength. A scene that did not show the villain's power was the fight against Moff Gideon, though. This battle had good choreography and some pretty awesome moves, but the problem is that Beskar is literally invincible. I felt like the dark troopers could defeat the Beskar because there's 60 of them, but Moff Gideon is just one dude, and when the Darksaber can't go through Din's armor, it doesn't feel that intense. They should have made Mando dodge the Darksaber and not get hit by it, and then Gideon can say something like, "Your armor's Beskar isn't strong enough to resist the Darksaber." That would have made it a lot more dangerous for Din Djarin. That's probably my least favorite thing about this episode, but there's a ton of good stuff to talk about. First of all, Moff Gideon tricked me when he said that Mando can take Grogu and they can part ways. I honestly believed Moff Gideon in this scene, and so did Din Djarin. So they definitely did a good job with Moff's dialogue. Also, Din getting the Darksaber is something I didn't expect, and Bo-Katan possibly having to fight him is a really cool idea. What else is cool is the Dark Troopers theme. I think this episode has some of the best music in the whole show. So that's a lot of good things I just talked about, but I need to mention the X-Wing in the room. Luke Skywalker has returned. Now, I don't need to explain why the scene is so good. You saw the episode. The slow build-up of him arriving is just so great. I saw the X-Wing and I thought, oh, so it's the New Republic. But then I realized that it could be Luke Skywalker. But I thought to myself, no way it's him. But then you see someone walking down the hallway with Jedi robes. That's when I knew it was Luke. It was just so incredible to watch. I think what really makes this scene one of the best in Star Wars history is the music. It's a completely original theme and it makes the scene even more powerful. I also like how Luke does some Anakin Skywalker moves, like crushing a Dark Trooper with the Force. And I know the CGI for his face isn't perfect, but I'm fine with it, because de-aging and making faces with CG is a new technology. And you can't advance new technology if you never use it. So it's a good thing that they are using it. So in 5 to 10 years, no one will be able to tell the difference between CGI and real actors, which is kind of spooky, but cool at the same time. Anyways, I'm getting off topic. Luke Skywalker is back in his prime. This is something fans have been wanting for 37 years. R2-D2 also returns to bring some lightheartedness to the moment. And of course, Din Djarin takes off his mask when saying goodbye to Grogu. That is his character development. He cares so much that he's willing to take off his helmet so Grogu can see his face. In Season 1, I mostly thought of The Mandalorian as a good and cool show, but not much more. But Season 2 really made me care about the characters a lot more, so that's why I think Season 2 is better. I'm going to give this episode a 9.5 out of 10. The only reason it loses a half point is because the Empire was Star Wars Rebels levels of weak, besides the Dark Troopers. But other than that, this is the perfect ending to the season. So that was my long overdue Season 2 of The Mandalorian review. I'm very excited for Season 3, which I've heard might be releasing in 2022, but we have the Boba show in 2021, so it's fine that it might not be next year. So thank you all so much for watching, have a happy new year, and I'll see you all next time. Peace out.